Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Fritz,
I'm Damon Lewis.
and you're listening or watching the Surf the Astral podcast. This is a show about meditation, lucid dreaming, and astral projection. So, welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. Today, we have a special guest with us. His name is Martin Azambuya, and he's dedicated most of his adult life to assisting others to reach their full potential, and in doing so, he continues to strive for his own. Martin has taught thousands of hours of classes across USA, Mexico, South America, and Europe on subjects of just the lucid out of body experiences, psychic development, ethics, and many other spiritual related topics since 2003. So, welcome, Martin.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah. So I'd like just to start off because I don't know, this is my actually first time I'm meeting you. Just I'm always curious about how did people get into spirituality? What would that how that look or start for you? So,
For me personally,
yeah. Yep.
very good. I as a child, I remember having some out of body experiences, flying dreams, things of this nature. That at the time, I I, I don't really couldn't really contextualize it.
Mm-hmm.
I remember always being a rather sensitive child in terms of perceiving energies around people or mood swings or things that were subtle in nature when observing uh, other adults and interactions around me. But honestly, it wasn't until was I was a young adult where my ex-wife, in fact, provided me some connection to some books at the time. For me, it was, if I remember correctly, Conversations with God. Book
Oh.
one was actually the first book that really opened the door for me to maybe remembering things within myself, and that opened the door to what later became more in line with the search, not the search, but the exploration of spirituality within,
Mm-hmm.
taking a very hard, deep look of who I was, things that I'd done, who I was choosing to be, and who I wanted to be in reality, more importantly. And so from there, one thing led to the other. I came across courses at the time and organization. Things rang very true to me, and very quickly I started to have some experiences as an adult at the time. This is about at this point like 19 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
with first out of body experiences as an adult, and from there it just continued developing and started to be, I guess, a more little by little more of a part of my daily life and daily mental energy and experience.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Okay. And just from your when you're talking, just out of curiosity, when you're younger, did you have an awareness of energy? Was that something like were you sensitive in a way to like feeling energy or hearing or maybe seeing or just kind of a knowing? Was that something that you kind of grew up with at all?
Yes, to some degree, yes. I didn't even know the word energy, of course.
Yeah.
So for me, it was really perception, sensations,
Hmm.
and the things I remember the most were, the subtleties of mood swings that could happen between adults. Kind of that observation of things were some of the memories I remember the most. Not really understanding the what was being spoken about, but yes, interestingly enough, I remember kind of perceiving and understanding, or perceiving their intention between each other of what was going on. And those
Hmm.
are some memories that I have in line. Maybe I was at this point 5, 6 years old, remembering many of these experiences as they started to happen. And then had invisible friends,
Yep.
which, to be honest, now I'm not sure if they were really invisible friends or maybe perceptions around myself, but definitely also having, yeah, again, flying dreams, things of this nature that I would wake up and have a certainty that that had just happened, but I couldn't really explain or didn't really even think about exploring what just happened. Was that reality or not? It was just a part of what I thought, that's just normal, in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Damon, did you have something?
Yeah, actually, um, I want to actually skip ahead a little bit. We can circle back. We can circle back if Andrew wants to, and if you want to, Martin. But I want to skip ahead a little bit and ask you, can you describe, give us the point at which maybe you've been doing exercises, energy exercises for a little while, and at the point at which you feel like you started to have some success? What did that look like? What were you doing? What exercises had you been doing? How long maybe did that take? Did it take years to get to that point? And kind of describe like that transition point, like I'm really getting it now. What was that like?
Well, I think that for me, that's a bit of a two-part kind of approach or question, because
Okay.
it was not a linear kind of experience at all. So what I mean by that is that I had some pretty early success rather quickly into the process as I started taking classes and practicing more different kinds of exercise that we could go through a couple in a little bit. So then I kind of like peaked there thinking, oh, this is great. You know, I leaving my body, I'm perceiving things, this and the other. And then there was I would go some weeks or months maybe not perceiving it as much. And I couldn't really understand the reasons why. So it took, I would say, when it comes to perception or to get a certain regularity, going through a lot of uh, counterflows in terms of maybe the absorption of energy in my day-to-day life, and then not being able to digest it properly, and that having physiological effects on me, dehydration, dreams, mood swings, just feeling, low or drained, things of this nature. So it took a few years, I would say perhaps within the first 2 to 3 years. And again, it's such a relative thing to say, because there's never a moment when one says, oh, I'm done with this process. There's always things that one continues to learn, overcome. Perhaps an environment that would drown you 3 years ago, one can handle much better now, and that just shows development, right? But then a situation where we drown now, even still, there's always going to be challenges and more challenges ahead, right? Improvements that one continues making and maturing and developing. So that's a never-ending process for me. And that even goes when it comes to perception or sensitivity, when it comes to subtle energies as well, or non-physical elements around environments or people, etc. There are things that are completely obviously invisible, if you will, to me, that I don't perceive at all, that are very, very subtle. In the same way that were things that were very, very subtle in some aspects for me 15 years ago, that are now much more tangible, right? And so that's an ever developing process. And within this process, at least in my personal experience, I've had ebbs and flows, right? So there are phases where I'll tend to have more non-physical experiences, and sometimes it's because of my own energies and attention of what I'm directing my attentions and efforts towards. Sometimes, life happens and I get just as physicalized as anybody, right? And I don't necessarily um, prioritize or think too much about non-physicality, and before I know it, maybe in a moment X, I'm I don't know, perhaps I'm overwhelmed with something, or upset, or irritated, right? And then I catch myself and go, wait a second, how did I get here? How many red flags did I not see after 19 years of dedicating so much time and energy to this? I still haven't learned. And the truth is, yes, I mean, I still haven't learned so many things. So again, in essence, the question is, it took maybe 3 years before I realized, okay, I can see definitely the bottom base, the points of reference have gotten to a point where now they're more tangible, and that has ever continued to increase at different phases at different times, for me at least. And again, the ebbs and flows, unfortunately, that could be something, a weak trait of mine, have always taken place as well. One of the things, for example, I still struggle with, and I'll be completely transparent with you, is something that I teach forever in classes, and that I've still struggle with is writing down my non-physical experiences, so that when they happen, I wake up and I'm right there, and I'm awake for 5 seconds before I just go back to sleep. And instead of grabbing the notebook that I have every night by my bedside, I just give in and I let myself go, thinking like, oh, this is so clear, there's no way I'm not going to remember it, right? And then the only thing I remember in the morning is that I felt I could not remember something that I don't remember at all now.
Yeah.
So again, that is still one of my struggles, and it's a metaphor for what I'm talking to you about. However, I will say this, that there's no doubt that over the last 19 years, at least for me, for sure, in terms of the ability to deal with different energetic environments, has changed dramatically as well. And even just in my own life, things that used to put me emotionally out or energetically out for a day or two or a week, now maybe I can process and digest in an hour or two, right? That's something that I've realized has changed over the years, that I have more of a buffer for stress and for the happenings of life, and for other people's kind of maybe attacks or reactions in whatever given situation that I had many years ago.
Yeah, that's very relatable, all of that. And definitely the idea of like the ground floor being, rising up, starting at the
Yes.
bottom, and then there's, even if you're ebbing and flowing, at least having that bottom floor. Yeah.
Exactly. And again, also aspects of mental processes, so connected to ethics, right? Perhaps 15 years ago there were certain lines of thought that I might have engaged, or perhaps been self-indulgent with, that they don't feel right at all for me now. Like, that doesn't happen anymore. So there's an element of ethical development to some degree as well within my own kind of mental processes also. And that definitely has had a shift or an effect on my non-physical kind of company or reality on the regular. Of course, again, one can always be in a vulnerable situation or moment, or have a bad moment or week or whatever, and dip and then come back out. But it tends to be less frequent, if you will.
Yeah, I noticed about that with what you're mentioning earlier with dreams. Like if I wake up in the middle of the night, which I often come out of a light sleeper, so I'll wake up at least a couple times throughout the night, and I'll have a dream in mind, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm kind of tired and kind of lazy, and then I'll be like, I'll remember that one, and then sure enough, I'll wake up and no, I don't remember it at all. So I can relate to that. I have to write it down, some sort of word or something related to it to kind of trigger that in the morning. Oh yeah, that
Exactly.
happened.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm always fascinated by people's just experiences. Could you maybe just go into some of your maybe initial experiences and just kind of what those were like just in the beginning?
Sure. One that comes to mind. I get this like my one of my first, if not my first, as clear experience as an adult. Was one that is very didactical in nature as well, because of the many elements that kind of took place in it. But my first daughter had just been born. She was perhaps 3 weeks old at this point, and I had just begun taking certain classes, so I was mentally saturated as well with the ideas, with the concepts, with also the phenomena in and of itself. So that could have also been an element. And I was also in what some people call like energetic springtime, right? Where the joy was, I was very joyful because, of course, my first daughter had just been born. So I was kind of like in this energetic bubble. And this has the tendency to affect one's energy system in terms of expanding it, allowing it to be very fluid. And that obviously, if it's very fluid, then one has more predisposition to be able to leave the body with the astral body, because of that glue is very fluid. So there was one night when we had a king size bed, and she was in the middle of us, and we had a little light kind of on in the bedroom, so there was light in the environment in the room, which is a key factor of what I'm going to explain. And we had it on because, you know, breastfeeding, and at that point when you just have a baby, and when it, you know, my ex-wife would wake up to breastfeed, then it was, you know, I'd go up and make some tea, and it was a whole, you know, kind of a joint experience, process as well, getting used to this whole thing. And so I was in a dream this night where I was at that time I was running a restaurant bar lounge in the meatpacking district on 13th Street, almost corner of Washington Street in the Village. And I was having this dream where I was walking away from this building, and everything was so perfect, like the cobblestones on that street. It's a cobblestone street, and the scaffolding and everything was very much exactly how, or at least what I perceived to be reality. So I'm walking away from the building, and at the time there was a lot of tension with the two owners of the building that we were in, this business, father-son team, and the contractor for the building. And so as to the point where whenever we were in the elevator together, or we were in a certain area together, you could feel the tension, right? It was just in the air. The air was thick when we were around, and some certainly there was some resentment there in the air, you know, and it was back and forth. I mean, you know, I was no saint in this situation, energetically, for sure. There was some animosity there. So in this dream in particular, I was walking away from them, and the three of them were lined up on the sidewalk, looking at me. And I remember looking back at them, and what caught my attention is that their faces were just glowing, and there was such love coming from them to me. And I remember thinking in the dream, going like, oh wow, so much love, you know, almost overwhelming. And then I thought, my next thought was, wait a second, that's not how they are. That's not, I must be dreaming. And in that moment, when I realized that because of that detail, I was dreaming, immediately I turned around and saw the rest of the street and the scaffolding that was coming close to me. And I thought, okay, if I'm dreaming, then I want to fly. You know, that was the next thought that I had. And immediately as I had that thought, I started to move, you know, upwards, and that scaffolding came, you know, very close to my face. We're talking maybe like 10 feet up in the air, so that I had, in my dream, moved that amount of space, I guess, as I was flying, right? And as I got to the scaffolding, I had the departure sensations kind of spinning out, and then the whole dream scenario completely disappeared, and I was kind of in completely black, what's called many times a blind projection, which is not uncommonly sometimes the initial phase of a projection, because you're so close to the body and the silver cord is still there. So the energies are denser around the body, and what one is perceiving is the ectoplasm, right, around the body, and so one sees nothing but blackness. So it's called a blind projection. So as I was there, I couldn't see anything, but I could very clearly, my point of consciousness or of reference was outside of my body. I could perceive my body below me, and then it was just a thing of kind of moving a little bit away from my body, and I would start to the sensations, I would call it the cellular sensations of my physical body, were so clear. I could perceive exactly what position my physical body was in. But as I moved away with my, you know, focus, my intentionality, then I would be more in this other body, the astral body, and my body, the perception of my body would disappear. And I remember getting a little bit like, whoa, what a, you know, hesitant at that point, kind of like, whoa, what's going on here? What's happening? And then just that thought would bring me back close to my body, and I would feel the vibrational state, you know, taking place, very very deep and very powerful sensation happening. in my body, as well as the astral body. And then I would feel in my knuckles and my knee, almost like there was a lack of fluidity there, maybe some blockages. And
Hmm.
so with the entrance of my astral body starting to go back into my body, those areas really, I wouldn't say hurt, but almost like hurt. It was very uncomfortable in those
Hmm.
areas. And as that was happening, then I'd have the mental, the thought again of like, no, let's leave again. And then I'd leave once more. So I went in and out of my body a couple of times in this experience. And then at one point, seeing what some uh, near death experiencers call the light, right? So I perceived a light, and I began to go kind of towards the light. Okay, let's focus, and went towards there. And I remember the sides of this tunnel that I found myself in were similar visually to when one is in the theater, okay, and you have the projector,
Hmm.
kind of the light on the side going to the screen,
Hmm.
and as if someone was smoking or something, and there was like different elements of smokiness or something on the sides around. And at the moment, I guess at the time, certainly part of my lack of focus, I got very much taken with the sides of the wall instead of kind of where I was going towards.
Hmm.
And I wanted to kind of exit kind of the side of the wall instead of just continuing to perhaps another experience, reality dimension, something
Hmm.
over there. And then at that moment, I just came right back into my body. And when I did, I opened my eyes, and it wasn't like waking up. I was completely alert, as if I'd been awake for an hour already. And the interesting part is that the light was on, that little small light in the bedroom. So I went from that blackness to the physical reality. So that was my first kind of out of body experience as a young adult. I was
Hmm.
26 at the time.
That's pretty awesome. That's especially when it was you made that transition. It started off as a dream, and then you sounds like that
Yes,
dissolved or collapsed, and then it went to the out of body
correct.
experience, and that uh,
Yes.
that's yeah, that's awesome.
Briefly, yeah, it briefly went to lucid dream, I suppose, and
Yeah,
then to the out of body experience. Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, excellent. Is that something that in your practice now? Is that do you more focus on the just projecting out, or is it do you still encounter those experiences of hey, I'm in a dream, and recognizing that, and then going from the transition from the lucid dream to the out of body state?
That's a great question. My situation, and to many projectors in general, right? Certainly, there are people. I think a micro minority of people on the planet, in my opinion, of what I've understand or encountered. What you'll find in these areas of spirituality and OBs is that, unfortunately, like human nature to some degree, there's a lot of sometimes exaggeration, a lot of kind of deformations or self in self
Self-aggrandizing.
aggrandizing.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
When with these type of thing, for me personally, it's certainly there's been a lot of experiences where that happen outside of the body, but absolutely, there's many more times, quite frankly, where I have an experience, and then it's in between that dream and OBE state. So when I come back, I'm not exactly sure what was dream kind of images, what was the actual reality of the OBE. I will many times recognize that it wasn't just 100% a dream, right? But at the same time, it wasn't just 100% an OBE.
Uh-huh.
So that is part of for me at least, certainly the self-analysis and being as completely objective. What I found, obviously, over the years, and just in general, what I tend to tell practitioners is the more objective one can try to be with their own subjectivity, then the better the development will be for the person. Because the minute that the person starts to need the experience to be one thing or the other, we start to get into emotional aspects, and it's very easy to deform reality and even change our memory of what actually may have happened. So,
Hmm.
going back to your question, in terms of the focus, I tend to I work with energy on a daily basis for sure. And not necessarily every night when I go to sleep am I going to sleep going like, okay, what technique am I going to try today? That simply would not be true in my case. Certainly it's not. What yes has happened over the years is that I tend to have more of regularity with remembering my dreams, and with maybe waking up a little bit outside of the body or within a dream. So there has been some other experiences where it begins as a dream many times. Places where I already have an energetic connection to. I grew up in Uruguay in South America. I lived 10 years there from 9 to almost 19.
Mm.
And sometimes I gravitate towards places in my hometown there, close to the social and sports club where I grew up and spent a lot of my childhood years, pockets. And I had 3, 4 friends that lived within that area on the block. And I might gravitate towards these little pockets. And it's a little different, right? So there's been different, interesting, different maybe extra physical kind of copies of this in the physicality in area over different experiences. And in different experiences, I've had more lucidity during these experiences or less of. And sometimes even within the same experience, it might increase and then decrease. And what I'm left with is, of course, the memory of the experience in and of itself, some of it being more direct and some of it being kind of like maybe a remembrance that turned a bit into a dream, and then a perception of something that may or may not have happened, right?
Yeah.
But yes, it has happened. It's definitely easier to take a lucid dream into an out-of-body experience than to lie down there and just have an OBE from scratch, although of course that is possible as well. I consider an OB an induced out-of-body experience if a person has done the work, energy work or a technique, and then they happen to fall asleep and then they wake up outside of the body. I consider that an induced OB in a way, even though they didn't feel the entire exit or anything like that, because
Yeah.
they've predisposed themselves and their energies to have that experience induced and not just not done anything.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
don't consider that a spontaneous experience. Yeah.
Yeah, Sampop talks about that. What, Martin, sometime we should introduce you to Sampop. He talks about that all the time, where he does his exercise and then he'll just let himself go to sleep, but immediately
There,
wake up right into projection.
there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I got you mentioned sometimes you would find yourself back maybe in hometown area or just where you grew up in pockets like that. Do you find that to be
Yes.
common, like for yourself or maybe students or just colleagues? Because I've often, as I've kind of increased awareness just in dream space, I tend to find myself going back. I grew up in Pennsylvania, outside of Philly, and so I would naturally find myself back at my parents' house, and
Yeah.
sometimes it does get kind of blurry of like, hey, was that me just becoming aware of myself out of the body? Was that just a dream of being at my parents' house? But I think we may have interviewed someone else that they have said something similar, like, hey, I find myself, just I start off at where I grew up, and then it kind of goes from there. Is that something that you find common, or?
Yes, there's energetic and extra physical logic to that. That is common, absolutely,
Hmm.
because those areas already have the energetic connection with the person established over years of experience, of emotions, of just their own physical and energetic experience there. So it does make sense that there's so much of their own subconscious and energies that are connected to certain spaces or areas where if they're out, they'll tend to gravitate towards. Absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Cool. And I like what you were saying also, going back to like the ground level, something I've been noticing too. I think you've been noticing that as well. Kathy's been noticing that. It's the more work you put into it, is you might get the fluctuation, but you start to get this ground level, which slowly is rising,
Yes.
more and more lucid dreams, more and more, lucidity during the day, and realizing, kind of the nature behind things,
Yeah.
It's definitely helpful to to. We were just talking about in a sort of another segment
Mm.
the bridging between the sleeping or the energy work at night and the daytime, bridging the two.
Mm.
I don't know if we want to get into
Yes.
that again. Maybe not.
Sure. Well, there's an element of that. Not only one thing to share there as well.
Sure.
Absolutely, I agree with what you're saying. For me, always the approach I give to phenomena, right,
Mm.
or the phenomenological nature of these things is always not for the sake in and of themselves, right? Because then sometimes,
Yeah.
one can miss the point of them in a way, right? But always trying to connect them to some sort of aspect of my life in terms of, because at the end of the day, the most important thing is this physical life we're living now, right? So how can it assist us to be better people, to have a better quality of life, to have a more richness in our life, to be able to be more transparent, more sincere, more who we actually are, more honest with ourselves, with others, et cetera, et cetera. Be a so that in the end we can die more at peace, right? Not
Right.
to be morbid,
Oh,
but
no.
to make the most of this opportunity, if you will, based on our own best efforts of what we understand to be correct, I suppose, right?
Uh,
So going to what Damon said, I remember this one experience. My oldest daughter at the time was maybe like 2 years old, and I was doing some energy work, and we lived in Park Slope in Brooklyn at the time, and I went to the park there to walk around with her some afternoon, and I was doing, moving my energies, my focus and mindfulness, attention up and down through my body, and I was feeling great, feeling very like, I'm the energy king right here, doing all this work, and fantastic, and feeling really good. And as I was going into the park with her in her little carriage, I'm pushing it. There was this high school competition, and there was like 3 or 4 different high schools, and I didn't realize exactly what was going on first. I saw some there were girls running around, and then as I got closer into this bubble, it was the last lap that they were doing, and they were arriving at the finish line, right? So there started to be a lot of excitement and all this, and as I'm going into that bubble, all of a sudden I went from moving these energies, very intensely, a lot of volume, feeling great, to then it starting to dissipate, and then got completely overwhelmed by this other energy around, where I was going in. And I competed in sports for many years in tennis, so there is an emotional aspect to that. I started getting a little choked up about the effort and the people at the finish line embracing their colleagues there from the school, and we won and this and the other, and all of this energy, this chaotic energy.
Mm.
And as I went closer to them, as I was crossing where they were arriving, the energy just completely shut down. There was nothing I could do to even sense it or continue to move it. It just vanished in a space of 2 minutes. I went from all of this volume and excellence of energy work to zero. And as they started, the last kind of place person arrived, and they started dissipating, and all of that, came down, and they walked away. Then as I started focusing again, I started to be able to perceive it and then work it again. And that was a great learning experience for me, in terms of experiencing how an outside environment can completely overwhelm our own energies and mental kind of life, if you will, and emotional life as well.
Mm.
So that was something that put my feet kind of on the ground, and was a very good point of reference there. Like, okay, I think I'm all this, but look, I can't even cross, girls track and field, kind of arriving at the finish line.
That's funny. Interesting. Yeah, so you're talking about your sound like you're moving energy up and down, kind of that motion. Is
Yes.
that something that you is a part of your practice still, or can maybe talk about that, what that's about?
For sure. Yeah, most of there's so many different dynamics of energy one can use at any given time. But definitely this kind of movement of energy up and down, the vibrational state and exteriorization are three of the most basic ones that I tend to use at any given moment in my life when I need. Absolutely. Um, these can be very efficient for self unblocking at some point to help unblock or help someone else. Certainly the exteriorization, right? And again, all of this is done completely anonymously, right? Especially when it comes to someone else. And again, because one of the key aspects is all in terms of ethics, I find, or the approach that we give, is that you never want to position, or it's inefficient for someone's development to have some sort of difference between your own process and theirs. What I mean by that is that the minute that a person starts to depend on you, either in actuality or psychologically, emotionally, on you being the one that helps save them or this or the other, and a level of dependence is created, then it kind of goes against the whole process of, in my opinion, of evolution and energetic development, right? So many times, many types of assistance are done in an anonymous manner. What I mean by that is sometimes you might be having just tea with a friend and hearing them, and then when you leave, the friend feels better than when you arrived. Okay, that is a type of assistance. Now the person you may leave with kind of like a charge of the residuals of the energy, and if you don't cut those cables or those connections, then before you know it, you might start to feel depressed or whatever that person was feeling. Right now it's sunk in and it's gotten into our own mind, and we've taken ownership of something that wasn't ours to begin with, right? The information of the energy. So this is where the skill or the ability or the development of the self-dominion of the energies takes place, where we can more as time goes on be able to jump into the water with more and more different, more complex situations without drowning in the water with the person we're trying to help, right? In essence.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. That's especially I kind of so I was asking kind of earlier, just kind of what you noticed, kind of just being sensitive in different ways to energy growing up, and I think we all have our degree of sensitivity. But yeah, I mean, sometimes you can kind of leave situations kind of feeling what they are feeling, or just thinking what having their thoughts kind of in your headspace and all that. So I like that, kind of that being able to separate that, and notice, hey, this is them and this is me, and that's huge.
Absolutely. Yes, that changes a lot in a person, can change a lot in a person's life for sure. Not taking everything on. In fact, it's very common. What I've seen over the years with students is students that were very sensitive to energies, perceived a lot, but what was missing in their process was the dominion of the energies, so that they were overwhelmed by the subway, they were overwhelmed by New York, overwhelmed at work, overwhelmed with all of this information that they were encountering. So every day when they got back home, they were just, they had headaches, they were dehydrated, they felt terrible with all of this process energy that they took on. They didn't have a way to then cut those connections, not to mention the non-physical maybe elements that came with those energies as well, having some sort of inference on them as well. So in my personal opinion, all these years of teaching, when people would come to the courses, if they leave with one thing only, with all the information they leave, and that is the ability to continue to develop their energies and be more self-sufficient with their energies, that alone can change someone's life to degrees that I don't think we can really comprehend in day to day over time, because there's no aspect of one's life that would not be able to affect in a positive way.
Yeah,
from conscious to unconscious.
I like elements. Especially the efficiency with the energy. It's gonna be a weird thing, but like occasionally I would watch the UFC, and like Conor McGregor, I think kind of years ago he fought someone, and I remember he lost his first fight to this person, and he was talking about, I wasn't efficient with my energy. And just hearing maybe I'm not sure what his awareness is with this type of stuff, energy, but just hearing someone say that, like, oh, I wasn't efficient with my energy, and just kind of
Mhm.
recognizing that just in a own self in that moment. So, but
Mhm.
go ahead, Damon.
Yeah, and the way that I see it too, when you're talking about especially the subway, New York City, is, and if you're talking about transitioning, I used to have a lot of problems in the subway as well. I mean, the subway is like the ultimate in energy exchange. There's just so much chaos going on in that
Oh,
subway,
for sure.
and
Yeah.
uh, I would sit and literally meditate and do the velo, do the up and down motion
Yep. Yeah.
to do psychic defense and sometimes exteriorize energy. I've had, different experiences that way. And at the end of the day, when you're going to sleep, whether it's the subway or just at work or any of these experiences, you can transition from I had this chaotic day to now I'm relaxing and going to sleep. And now I'm having these dreams in a much more peaceful manner because you're not carrying all that energy into the laying down process where you're trying to go to sleep. So you're not sitting there fidgeting and rolling over. And then when you
Yep.
actually do go to sleep, you're not having nightmares and conflicts in the dream. So it's one to the other, right from the day
Yes.
to the night.
Absolutely. As we were speaking about today, one of the more efficient ways of energy development is in little moments at a time during the day on a more continuous basis, so that, as we get back home and go to bed, we're already in a completely different state because it's cumulative. And if we've already done some energy work during the day to say something, I don't know, 10 times, 12 times, that's a completely different state that we're in at the end of the day. Even if we try to do the same amount of energy, but just in one block all at once, we will have more lucidity. We'll be in a better energetic condition as we do it during the day, and obviously we'll be able to face our interactions, our challenges, our situations in a better state if that's already there on a continuous basis. If that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, Martin, I just got a, it's kind of like a two-parter. It's, I guess I'm just kind of curious of, maybe what you're experimenting just with kind of just the out of body state just of recent time. And then maybe just talk a little bit about, people that are listening are interested in learning how to have an out of body experience, or maybe they want to take their practice to like another level. Maybe just kind of can speak on that a little bit.
Sure. So the first question was what I'm experiencing with in terms of techniques or things out of body experience in and of itself.
Yeah, just like maybe just you know, yeah, just kind of in the out of body state, just kind of what you're experiencing there, or how that maybe that has
Oh,
evolved, I
okay.
guess. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, that in my case has been quite interconnected most of the times with things that were taking place in my life.
Mm,
Right. There have been, of course, experiences where I might have ended up in some way, not knowing how I got there, but waking up in a certain environment
mm,
where I was more there for some sort of assistential purpose, that I perceived that I was, some sort of small little part of in some way, and that I would get very clear ideas. It's much easier non-physically to know what thoughts are yours and what thoughts are not yours extra
yeah.
physically when we're out of the body. So some sort of guidance. I was many times kind of there on a need to know basis in a way, like I was, almost like if I were to know more, I would mess things up or something as some sort of child, which in a way, that's correct. Many times we are kind of like extra physically, no doubt, kind of like children. And there are other, I guess, more developed kind of entities, if you will, that are more at the core and the organization of whatever we may be being used for in a good way, ethically, for some sort of, because we have some sort of predisposition for some assistential purpose. But in some sort of environment that is a little difficult, that is difficult in terms of that there's, I guess, not a lot of hope, right? Some suffering there from some consciousness that are in that environment. And depending on the experience, things similar to what some kind of neighborhood or area on Earth may kind of feel or look like, if you will. But perhaps in this particular one that I'm thinking of, kind of that environment, and I don't know 100% if that was my perception of the environment or if that was the environment, kind of that extra physical reality, non-physical reality, of kind of like tones of just grayish different tones of more darker to lighter grays, in one way of putting it. So it was very drab environment. There was difficulty there. There was addiction kind of in the air, or processes with non-physical consciousness that were continuing to be in some sort of addictive state. And I remember kind of just being there and walking through a line, and I don't even know exactly or remember what exactly this line was for, but there was absolutely no fear, right? It was an environment that could cause some fear for sure, but me personally, it was like I was not there alone, although visually I was there alone with all these other consciousnesses. And then I remember just pockets of it, going through kind of an open space and then being on the other side and then interacting with the person, and then waking up, right? So little aspects of that. Sometimes it's more clear. I have had some experiences where there's kind of a non-physical, and again, this connects. I mean, I've given, I don't know, hundreds or thousands of classes over the last 19 years. So it would make sense that I would be in some sort of non-physical element here and there, where there's kind of education or some sort of class-related activity going on outside of the body. Many times I've been more like a student in these kind of environments or constructions, but there have been a couple of times. One of them actually was with Lewis, where he was talking to some group on one side, and I was here with another on something that looked a little bit like a picnic bench, right? They were kind of, it wasn't exactly that, but that's what comes to mind. And some people talking to people kind of floating, and very normal. And I remember in my little group that I had, kind of like breakout sessions. This is what it kind of felt like, right? In my group, and I don't remember who it was, but I know that I knew this person. She was a woman, and then said, we're oh my goodness, we're not going to remember that we're out of our body, or something like that, as we were like talking in our little breakup session. And I remember getting right in her face and going like, look into my eyes, you're going to remember that you're out of the body. Like this.
You will remember.
Yes, you will remember, kind of really making that point. And it was connected a little bit to what was being kind of spoken about. So there's elements. I mean, during any experience, we're not going to know the totality most times of what's going on, but your little kind of world in that picture. And then when you leave it, then I can explain it like explaining to you, but I had no idea of what Lewis was or wasn't, saying, or what the totality of that environment or that structure, or that organization was all about. And I'm giving you just a snippet, here, but you come back still with certainly experiential knowledge and accumulation over time of experiences. In other situations, at a certain time, I had several extra physical experiences that had to do with, I had a very difficult kind of process of divorce and custody and all of this situation at a certain point. And there were quite a few that had to do, or that were included, my ex-wife, that things for quite a long time got difficult there. And I'm sure, I mean, I can't prove this outside. I can only say what has happened over time. is that it had to do with kind of the healing of a certain situation. Again, I was there because I was involved in the situation, right? But it wasn't me doing any sort of healing. I was there, and I remember the experiences I kind of had. But things over times, I mean, we went, it's 180 degrees over several of these experiences, and then seeing a certain change in physical life, and especially in engagement and interaction. It went 180 degrees for the last 5 years to now. It's completely night and day.
Oh, wow.
How far our relationship has come, true healing, which began in the physical dimension with just thinking, I want to be able to think affectionately of her, period, and then working on that over time and time again. So again, one thing leads or engages with the other, right? The physical to the non-physical. There have been some other experience that have been, more, I guess, leisurely in nature, where I can't really, there's no necessarily, at least that I can perceive, any existential element to it, but that I find myself, flying and enjoying kind of the flight. This happened several times to when in kind of environments where I have already energetic connection to, where I grew up, in Uruguay, other areas in Toronto where I lived for many years, even here in New York, the area where I worked at in different parts of my life here, gravitating towards that. And then being sure, knowing I'm out of my body and kind of enjoying that, and just coming back to the body with a great deal of energy and feeling very energetic, I guess, energized after, the experience. So again, they've been really all over the place. And certainly there have been many experiences where I only realize that I was out of my body when I wake up, because of the energetic repercussions when I wake up and think of the experience. It's not like a dream, right? I just get the vibrational state. I still have the residuals, of it energetically, and I'm kind of like vibrating for, a minute or two after I'm waking up. So clearly it's not a dream, right? But during the experience, not having enough lucidity to realize during the OBE that I was actually outside of the body. So it becomes more like a lucid dream that you're wandering in and out of. If you have, for example, flying, but thinking, yeah, this is just normal, I fly all the time, not realizing that you don't fly in your physical body, so you must be out of the body, but not making that little jump, that connection to realize that.
Yeah.
So they can be, in my case, certainly they can be very varied, and many times are connected to my life, yes, as well, or engaged in some way.
Interesting. Very cool. Yeah, I'm just curious of if this is something that maybe students of yours have expressed, or maybe you've personally experienced, but there's been times where I could feel and I know I made the separation out of the body. And there's sometimes, I think you were mentioning before about like kind of a blind projection where you just like I'm not seeing anything, but I know, I've detached. I know I'm out. I'm not sure what's quite
Yes.
happening. I have a sense of maybe where I'm at, kind of ish, but
Yes.
it's just like, wow, it's like I put I got sunglasses on or something, and I can't see anything. So,
Yes.
is that something that's common, that experience?
Well, I would say that it's not uncommon,
Oh, okay.
in terms of blind projections. Yes, and one of the things that helps very much in blind projections is actually working with energies in the astral body, clearing the energies in the surrounding. Also, what we have kind of, I guess, laden on our own astral body. Sometimes we may feel a little bit like we're walking underwater, right? So the
Yeah.
silver cord is still kind of doing its pull, and we're close to the body and we can't exactly control it. So it might turn into a fearful dream where someone's chasing us, or we're trying to reach somewhere that we can't get to. Many times this is that the person is outside of the body, and then because of the feelings of the silver cord and that we can move, we unconsciously and immediately, instantaneously justify the dream to justify our sensations. that we're having with the astral body. But again, this is one of the important aspects of energy work. If we are used to working energies in daily life, then in those moments, as a second nature, we'll have the tendency to then think of energies or do some exteriorization or some up and down, and immediately start to clear that environment. And two of the things that would happen first, usually, is one, we should start to see something around, whether it's the environment in our room, right? We realize we're there, or environment X, that where we might be connected to or be finding ourselves in. And two, more lightness of the astral body as well, as we start to clear it with this kind of denser energies from the body itself, the physical body.
Yeah, I think Damon and I have mentioned that, or I expressed that to him, where I will separate, and sometimes it's kind of like a kind of a stumbling, kind of drunk kind of feeling, and blind.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, the drunk projection.
Yeah.
The drunk projection. Yes.
Right. That's funny. Yeah. So Martin, I guess, is there maybe just talk a little bit about maybe some tips on just maybe what you kind of do in your practice, or what people can maybe do to just kind of start out, or maybe go to another level, whether maybe whoever they're at in their kind of practice.
Sure. I think the essential, there's some things that are essential, I think, that can maybe help anyone to get to the point where they are, because this is so, it really depends on the person's reality and where they are, right? And that's the most important thing, that we're at kind of being coherent with ourselves, and that we're doing the best that we can with what we can do, right, within our life, right? So that's important to just mention, I suppose. But the being mentally saturated, and when I say saturated, I don't mean obsessed with, right? But the more that we can start to look at ourselves as a non-physical being, right, and look at the non-physical elements of our day-to-day life and interactions and thought processes, then that will automatically start to engage us in predisposing us to have more non-physical experiences, as a matter of I wouldn't say second nature every night, but certainly that we become more multi-dimensional in nature, if you will, in terms of our approach to things. And that tends to have a repercussion in our experiences, for sure. Another thing is kind of it's trying to wipe our mind clean of kind of preconceived concepts or ideas that we may have, because what we feel is 100% true right now, it's probably not that. We're seeing like a little minuscule part of what actually is. So I think just as an ongoing process, the more that we can be open to changing or experiencing something new that can shift a little bit how we feel about how things may be, A, B, or C, whether it's physically or extra-physically, I think that will help us ongoing to continue our development at a pace that is more in line with what our potential is, if you will, right? Another thing is, I think, in terms of the logistical aspect of it, or the technical part, that if once we find technique or styles that work for us, then to continue to dive deeper into those skills, and not just jump to something else, because the skills that get us to the out of body experience, whether what works for us is breath work or energy work, or maybe visualizations to predispose when it comes to OBE techniques. Once we find what that line is, then the most important thing is to have the extra physical experience. It's not exactly how you get there, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I would suggest going deeper into what we find works for us, rather than jumping around. Another important thing to consider, I think, is that many times we might have a lot of success with a type of technique or developing attributes that we think are inexistent within us. Okay, this is important. And that after actually giving time and true best efforts with a particular technique or skill that we don't think is within us, I've seen many people have a lifetime of success after that. That, you know, we come with so much kind of maybe experience within that we don't even know we have currently in this life, that sometimes it's a process of kind of taking the lid off something that is kind of burying deep right now at this moment. But as we start to dig that up, a lot of memories and understandings and skills kind of synapses get tattooed into our brain very rapidly, and then we hit another level within ourselves that was always there to begin with, but that we weren't accessing it consciously, if you will. So those are some aspects of suggestions, I guess, on essential level that can maybe help people whatever level they may find themselves at.
Yeah, that's great. That makes a lot of sense. Damon, did you have any questions here?
No, I think it's a good time to close out this episode. We can sort of those are great tips. I think you obviously, all your years of experience, you have a lot of concise knowledge, and all the ways you've taught those classes. That really it's really helpful.
Thank you.
And it'd be great to talk to you more too. I'm sure we'll probably do more.
I'd love
episodes.
to.
Yeah,
absolutely. I'd love to. I've enjoyed it very much. You know, to those that are interested, at Mosaic, we have a class coming up for those that may be interested on this Sunday, March 7th at 1 p.m., 2 p.m. Eastern. 1 p.m. Eastern. That's called a Clear Your Energies, Mind Body Energy Reset. So it's a Clear Your Energies course. And again, it's taught by David Kalura, and it's just something that people that might be interested in exploring, kind of how to reset. Right nowadays, again, it's challenging many times to be able to really sometimes be grounded within the chaos that we might find ourselves in. So I just put that out there to whoever might be interested.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, and it's Mosaic so MOSAICWE.com. Mosaic.
That is correct.
.com.
Yeah, and then just go to the events tab and you'll see everything that's coming up. We have several other things in the pipeline as well.
Cool.
Awesome. Excellent. Yeah, we'll leave that in the description and put that on the video kind of when we edit this. But yeah, excellent. Martin, I feel like we could talk forever. I have like so many other questions, but yeah, I think this is a good time to kind of wrap it up. And but yeah, I feel very enthusiastic just kind of speaking with you and getting to know you. And yeah, I think that's the helpful thing with getting into this and doing more of it, is having that, because it is easy to get kind of in a dry spell or kind of a rut. And I find that speaking with others and learning more, and it just kind of like boosts the enthusiasm and that motivation and inspiration. So that's done for me, just kind of talking with you. So I appreciate you coming on. And so
thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you. Yeah. And I'd love to be on again. Absolutely.
Cool. Yeah, and I encourage people to ask questions in the comment section and interact. Everybody will do their best to, if we have questions, I could shoot it over to Martin.
Perfect.
Yep.
I'd love to.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to have you on, and well, I'm sure we'll speak again. And everyone, go check out that website, what they offer, and everyone, thank you for listening and thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.